Georgia Tech just did something this week they haven't done since 2014.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. Wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I'm plenty smart enough to talk Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. We want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you go to download them, make sure you leave us a 5-star review while you're there. Today on the show, we'll get into how does the tight end room measure up now that we know who's there. Does Tuke suing their quarterback help out Georgia Tech? But first, Jarvis, we found out something this week as it's weird. The season for Georgia Tech has been over for quite some time, and yet because this past week we just wrapped up the national championship, we now learned a final vote amongst the coaches for how all of the rankings would fall. Georgia Tech, after having a 9-4 season in 2025, ends up 24th in the coaches poll. What do you kind of make of Georgia Tech being able to pull off a top 25 season, something that they hadn't done since 2014?
It lets you know that they're building towards something. It lets you know that Tech is on the right path. It lets you know that they have the right coach, and that has been backed up financially, for the higher ups over there on the flat. So when you think about making that jump, right? I know you're probably sitting in your car right now, or you're sitting at your desktop looking at this thing on YouTube and saying, Jarvis, they had a chance to get to the ACC championship. And if they would have gotten to the ACC championship, they would have beat Virginia. Yeah, I get it. But you got to take a step back. Now the season over with, we've kind of moved on past that month of November. It was a little rough. November was rough. I get it. But when you take a look at this thing and say, hey, you were one of the best 25, you were one of the best 25 teams in the country, that means something. That means that you're on the right path. And I think that if you've been a Tech fan for the past 25 years, you understand that being on the right path is the place to be, because the dude before Brent Key came in, we know how that went, and it wasn't pretty. It was actually ugly.
Yeah, I think there's times where looking back at this past season feels frustrating, because you go, what could have been? What could have happened if only that Pitt game had gone differently, if only that NC State game had gone differently, if only that Georgia game had gone differently, and so on and so forth. And I don't know, maybe you're amongst the people that, would have hoped the Pop-Tarts Bowl went a different way, but that was just such a mixed bag by the time you reached that point in the season. So I feel like there's plenty of reasons for Tech fans to feel like, man, it was disappointing just because of where you ultimately ended up, knowing that you had that 8-0 mark on the year, and it just sticks out in your brain so much. But I feel like when you're able to go and look at this from a macro level, and think of, okay, Georgia Tech's been playing football for 133 seasons. This past season they were tied for 10th most victories in their entire history. That is an accomplishment, to have the respect of the coaches after you did lay an egg towards the end of the season, the back end of the season, to get the respect of the coaches to vote you in as a top 25 team means something. Now, look, you're not taking any participation trophies home. You're not, getting a medal, a certificate, anything like that. And you can't buy anything with being ranked top 25. You don't really necessarily get any recruits per se off of doing this, but it shows the positive steps that this university is making. And I saw this other stat just based off of the success that Georgia Tech had this year when it comes to the polls specifically, that I think it stands for something, which is Georgia Tech was ranked in the final 14 national polls. That is the longest same season streak since the Jackets were ranked in all 16 polls way back in the year 1999. So that just shows you that this was a successful season. And, the coaches amongst the league and college football as a whole see that. And I feel like fans need to be reminded of it, especially as you head into a season that is probably going to face some turmoil and is definitely facing a lot of questions just because of how much change is on the horizon.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where and I feel like this is one of those pressure situations too. Like being able to finish in the top 25 for the first time since 2014. It's the first time you won 9 games since 2016. So this is when you preach making that jump, becoming a better team and continue to build on something. You talked about the whole recruit piece. You can't say, oh yeah, we finished the top 25. No, you can't do that. But hey, look at what we're doing right here. Hey, look at what how much money is coming in as far as for donations to build up the stadium and Bobby Dodd, and you see all the renovations going over there. Hey, man, people are invested here. So you can come here and you're going to play, and 2, that people are not only invested financially, they're invested in you as the person too. Because hey, not only can you go get an opportunity to go play in the league and get some good coaching, get some good teaching over here, you're also going to get this degree that's going to take you a much longer way than your however long you play in the NFL, because NFL stands for not for long. So I think that the selling point is part of the selling point, finishing in the top 25. But it's not the main character, but it is definitely part of the whole package deal, because the package deal key is building something, people invested financially and in the person as well. All of those things kind of combine to say, hey, this season was worth it. I know it was disappointing towards the end, but it was worth it for sure.
Yeah. Also, just I'm thinking, do you think Justice Haynes is transferring to Georgia Tech if they didn't go 9-4 last season? If they weren't in the mix at one point for the college football playoff, if they weren't in the mix for the ACC championship, like all of those things that led you to getting the respect of the coaches, to getting a top 25 finish to the season, those definitely help when it comes to the transfer portal. And because ideally, Jarvis, Justice Haynes is not going to be the best transfer into your school. This isn't just going to be a flash in the pan sort of situation. Like, this is going to be you're continuing to be able to get guys like that, not only because you have the money to get them, but because they want to come and play for university because they know they have an opportunity for success, beyond just playing in the regular season. All right, let's go now from taking such a close look at what's happened in the past to what's potentially happening in the future for another ACC school that might be affecting the Yellow Jackets. How does Duke suing their quarterback help Georgia Tech? FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll get a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost let you lean into your game day instinct. So as we come up on conference championship weekend, you can lean into, hey, do I like the favorite here? Do I want to go for the underdog? Do I feel confident about specific quarterback play? Because there's one team over in the AFC, got to play their backup now. All of these things come into play with the profit boost pack that you want to use with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. You already live your team every day. Take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Jarvis, when the transfer portal was wrapping up, it felt like all of the drama had already unfolded. We kind of knew where a lot of these players were going. Few, kind of dotting I's dotting I's, crossing T's, all that sort of thing, as the portal closed a week ago. And yet, when that time came, pure chaos happened because Duke quarterback Darian Mensah entered the transfer portal, and a lot of people were confused because it was like, doesn't he have a contract with the Blue Devils? So how is he, after just 1 year of a 2-year deal, getting out of said contract, entering the transfer portal? Obviously, then the rumors start to swirl of where he might be going and what they might be paying his sister, and all of these sorts of arrangements that happened as the connections to Miami, the rumors, surfaced and all this sort of thing. I'm curious, though, from this perspective, how do you see Darian Mensah entering the transfer portal while still under contract, getting sued by Duke, potentially benefiting Georgia Tech?
I think it benefits Georgia Tech by building up the conference. What do you mean building up the conference? It builds up the conference because it's in the mouths of all the people that cover college football.
Yeah.
And when you think about the old school rivalries and all that stuff, just how they started, how guys normally got recruited by those two schools, and the guy who went to the neighboring school, he got looked at a certain way, and then when they played each other every year, they kind of had those conversations during games, and it was just a really, a pretty big deal. Like, for example, Florida State. It was that, you know what I'm saying? And you think about that was the, SEC, ACC deal. But when you think about what could potentially spark a rivalry, how about this? Your conference foe, I'm not going to call him a rival, offered up $10 million, housing, scholarship to his sister, and NIL deal. Come on down here. We'll pay you whatever. On the last day that you can hop into the portal. And basically, that all of the big dogs, no pun intended, are gone. They're out. They're out the door. So, and then, Manny Diaz is the head coach of said team that Miami is trying to steal from. So it's just so many little layers involved in this. And when you got the team suing them, and then you got all these legalese explanations flying all over Twitter and stuff, man, I feel like this is great. This is great for the conference. And then you talking about potentially jumping off something, right? Like a rivalry jumping off something. This could potentially jump off a really nice back and forth between Duke and Miami. And I think that the more conversations that are being had about teams in the conference, it helps everybody. Because a lot of times when you get these conversations or these things start to happen, conversations start happening, and then those conferences then get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to preseason polls. We know preseason polls matter. I know people like, oh, it don't matter. They should be done before the season. Yeah, but the college football playoff committee uses that. That's how they gauge, the start of the season as they watch all the games, because we know they watch every game. Caleb, they watch every last game, all 22. They breaking that bad boy down from front to back, dog, all 4 quarters, dog. So we know they watch all the games. So they're using that preseason. Why are you laughing at me, man?
I'm just say psych, Jarvis. Say psych.
No, I'm not. I believe what they tell me until they, what I'm saying, I find out that they're lying. You know what I mean? Like, so, I like to believe people when they say stuff, because I want people to believe me when I talk. You know what I'm saying? So
fair enough.
Oh yeah, but yeah, man. All in all, I love chaos, man. I love it. I love all this NIL stuff, man. Teams passing out the bag with the lights on and everybody in the room. Man, for everybody to see, for everybody to discuss and figure out if the player worth it or not. Yeah, man, let's go. Yeah, the ACC's in the headlines. Duke football is in the headlines.
Yeah,
they got a really good back. They got they're known for basketball, but they're in headlines for football right now. So yeah, I think it's great for the conference, and I think that any conversations about the conference is going to help everybody in the long run.
I look at it from this perspective, which is so like the legalese that's happening right now is that Duke is suing Mensah because they're claiming, hey, you signed a contract, you sold your exclusive NIL rights to the university, which included a promise that you would not enroll or compete in athletics at another collegiate institution between July 2025 and December 31st, 2026. Okay, so that would mean he's locked in to Duke. However, what we've learned from a lot of these deals is these contracts apparently don't really mean anything, which I think is a bigger deal for down the line for Georgia Tech. Is like maybe this creates some clarity for the university and just college football overall as a whole, so you can actually sign a deal and both sides, not just the player, but both sides have to stick to their deal. Well, Jarvis, I think Darian Mensah is headed to Miami. Like, I think there is no way that Duke is going to end up being able to hold him to this, and that he'll end up the newest quarterback at Miami. Why is that good for Georgia Tech? Well, because there is a schedule in 2026 where Georgia Tech will play Boston College, Louisville, Wake Forest, Clemson, Pitt, Stanford, Virginia Tech, and Duke. I did not say Miami. And so I feel like there is a chaos. Yeah, I feel like there's a chaos situation where Darian Mensah ends up leaving and going to Miami. Duke doesn't have a quarterback, and Georgia Tech doesn't have to face Miami and then gets easier competition because Duke is scrambling to figure out their quarterback situation. It just feels like a win-win for the university, as you mentioned, getting talked about in the media. And when you're talked about in the media, people think about you more. When they think about you more, they connect you to, more importance. And they think about you when it comes awards time, when it comes rankings time, because as we know, especially when it comes to like the AP poll, the voters for said AP poll maybe not always on their P's and Q's and paying the most attention. But
you're not qualified, Caleb.
I didn't say that.
Man, you've been throwing a couple shots, a little shade at the college football playoff committee. No, don't believe they're watching film and stuff. And
I just wonder.
AP polls voters aren't qualified, man. You don't want tonight, dog.
I certainly wonder about qualifications for both positions, but when it comes to Tech, I mean, I just find it funny. You mentioned Duke being known more for Duke basketball than Duke football. Well, there's a judge who presided over this initial part of the case who is a Duke basketball season ticket holder, and he still didn't side with Duke and them trying to get this, protective order that prevented Mensah from entering the transfer portal last week. So everything feels like all signs are pointed towards Mensah going to Miami. And sure, they'll be back in the headlines all over again for all of those sorts of things, especially after playing in a national championship. But Georgia Tech doesn't have to worry about them, and they do have to worry about Duke. And so you're telling me I can already feel better about a win over an ACC school in 2026? I'm going to take that all day, every day.
Absolutely, man. And because, Darian Mensah is a really good quarterback, and he's going to have opportunity to play at the next level. So when you take that caliber of player, especially at the quarterback position, and we know how important that position is in today's game and yesterday's game too. I'll take it. You can say whatever you want. Oh, they took the quarterback from us. Man, tough cookie. Tech lost their OC, a wide receiver, Bailey Stockton, Luke Harpering, Aaron Philo, their incumbent starter, was right there in the bag.
I'm about to say, you
stick around.
You mentioned Philo a little low on that list. I was
yeah. He going down for a nice competition. He gonna be smoking cigarettes on the bench. You know what I'm saying? Like Luke and Bailey. You know what I'm saying? But hey, he should be the starter, right?
Well, speaking of tight ends, because you did just mention Luke Harpering, who did take his talents down to Florida, not to South Beach, but to Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
Not nearly as nice. Let's have this conversation next of how does the current tight end room measure up? Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you a real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it all. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Jarvis, we've taken a look at a couple of different positions on this team heading into 2026, but it feels like we've when these guys signed out of the transfer portal, when they signed as freshmen coming in, we've talked about a few of them, but overall as an entire position group, one that saw a lot of change from 2025 to this season. I mean, there was so many seniors amongst that group, and then Luke Harpering, who moves. How do you feel like this tight end room is measuring up for Nathan Brock in this offense heading into this upcoming season?
Well, let me start off by saying how they measure up physically. Gavin Harris, 6'3", 240. Spencer Merman, 6'6", 260. Chris Corbo, 6'5", 250. Yep, that sounds about right. Yeah, just from a physical standpoint. Now, let's look at the production that you got out of that tight end group last year. You know how many catches they had combined, Caleb?
How many?
36. 36 catches combined. Do you know how many catches Gavin Harris had for New Mexico last year? 37. So he had more catches than all of them combined. Wow. And, Chris Corbo, who's a pass catching tight end, he had 45. So, yeah, both of them individuals had more catches than the entire tight end room last year. So, yeah, Brent Key did his job. He upgraded that tight end room tremendously. And Spencer Merman's, we know that he's a blocking tight end.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Well, but you need that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course.
That's my thing is you not only get a blocking tight end, which it's funny. I feel like college football fans in general just have less respect for those type of guys because they want the Travis Kelce's. They want the George Kittles. They want the flashy pass catchers. And yet, with the way this team is going to run the football with Justice Haynes, it is going to be so imperative that they have a guy like Spencer Mermans, who is, literally discussed as the best FCS blocking tight end this past season. So being able to get that type of guy, and then, as you mentioned, getting some pass catching tight ends. I'm also interested in not only I think the freshmen who are coming in, probably not going to see the field a ton. If we're being completely honest, I don't think that's a diss to them as talented players. The only way that I can see potentially one of them seeing the field is Nathan. I always want to mess up his name. Agiamang, who is that hybrid role, 6'5", 230, played both wide receiver and tight end in high school. And I would wonder if, because of depth at wide receiver for the Yellow Jackets this upcoming year, if we don't see that hybrid role end up more with the receivers than he ends up with the tight ends. Otherwise, I think you've got redshirt sophomore in Kevin Roche that I think is going to be a really interesting potential breakout option, just because dude's got incredible hands that he showed from his high school days, and he is 6'9", 255. And Jarvis, you know how I get about measurables, man.
Of course, yeah.
I just prototype pass catching tight end. I feel like another year of development for Kevin Roche. I would love to see this tight end room get as stacked as it felt like they were as a senior group this past year, even though, as you mentioned, didn't catch a ton of passes.
And to add to that, to give a little credit towards the tight end room last year, Buster Faulkner didn't use tight ends like that.
No,
it wasn't part of his offense.
I feel like it drove me nuts last year too, because I felt there were so many opportunities left on the table where Haynes should have been finding his tight ends more.
Yeah, because they're your best friend, especially for young quarterbacks. So and bring it to the now and what we're looking at now. That's why I feel like they brought in some pass catching tight ends. Talked about Roush. You talk about Spencer Mermans. I could easily see George Godsey using a lot of 12 personnel this year, man.
Yes,
because it just makes too much sense, and especially in the passing game as well. Because, like you said, when you're cooking in that run game, man, that play action is going to be your best friend. And most of the times when you got big guys who can block and also catch passes when they're wide open, because that's a lot of times what happened. Tight end is kind of forgotten about, in today's offenses, because guys want to run these 11 personnel out there with 3 wide receivers and all that stuff. So those guys being taken off the field for the most part, unless you got a hybrid guy that can line up in the slot and be effective. But I think just from a schematic standpoint, I feel like George Godsey is showing his hand a little bit, and I'm okay with that, because like, hey man, we're gonna run the rock and we're gonna run these tight ends out here, get some 13 personnel. I would love to see that, because you just don't see it that much in today's college game. So I feel like, man, you're gonna have defenses really in a pinch, because most of these guys are built to be in a nickel and base. You used to get a lot of nickel base defenses nowadays, like literally. In the league, this is 75% of the time that teams are in nickel. So if you run out there in 13 personnel, like, oh, coach, what we run? What we gonna do with 3 tight ends? Time out. Because, man, like, hey, man, we about to run the ball down your throat. What you gonna do about it? You gonna keep that 5th DB on the field? Good luck with that. So yeah, this is the way they went after it in the portal with this tight end position. It's a clear upgrade, hands down, clear upgrade. And I think that we're starting to see George Godsey's stamp being put on this offense, because the tight end will be utilized this year. I'll go ahead and say that right now.
Yeah, I'm you know what, I'm kind of excited for Jarvis. Yeah, I've obviously and I will stand by it, I've been critical of the decision to hire George Godsey, but if this means I see less screen passes in 2026, because man, if there was one thing I got tired of with Buster, it is the number of screen passes that defenses also knew were coming, just like I did. So yeah, I am all for, clearly the emphasis is on running the football, and you need your tight ends in order to block and make all that happen. But having them more as having your tight ends as your safety blankets rather than your play call and screens be your safety blanket, I think is going to be interesting. And I'm curious to see how it's all going to unfold. And I'm definitely feeling much, much stronger about this position group heading into the season than certainly we did before, well, kind of in the middle of the transfer portal window being open. But Jarvis, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts for free. Follow the show on social media, as well as Jarvis at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.